All right, so here we are in Red Dead Redemption 2. Just wanted to run through it today with the 9070 XT and a 9800 X3D as the CPU. So right here, we are in Valentine. We're just going to run around here and see what we can expect. Now, this game does have a lot of different options, so I'm just going to keep this test relatively simple and relatively quick, just to avoid any unnecessary complications and stuff like that. I am running the Vulkan API. That is typically the one that runs a little bit better. If you are having stability issues, you can switch over to DirectX 12. That will typically resolve them. But right now, everything is running pretty well. So here's the current settings here. Let me just jump in. I've basically taken everything for this particular test at 4K and just maxed it out completely. Again, there's a lot of options in here that are just very, very complicated. It's not your traditional low, medium, high, ultra. So everything in here is at the absolute maximum it can go. All right. So right here, I just wanted to start here instead. Typically, I will start at like a low setting. But right here, this gives us about 35, 34 FPS. And we're using about 13.4, or we're allocating about 13.4, and we're using about 10.4. So VRAM looks pretty good. We're going to have to start doing a little bit of upscaling though, because right here, 37 FPS is not quite adequate. And again, this will probably be a little bit shorter test. I've also got my PCL up there, but it is not reporting, and that is something that unfortunately on AMD cards is just very, very difficult to get to work. But we're going to keep an eye on our 1% lows, and see if that's close to our FPS. So right here, 32 FPS, we're going to be able to do a little bit better than that. All right, so come in here, settings. We're just going to do a little upscale. Nothing too crazy. All right, so let's come in here to FSR 2. Now, I have overridden this with DLSS Swapper to be DLSS 3.1. However, even though I have 3.1 running, DLSS 4 just doesn't work. It won't do anything. And that is just something I've torn my hair out about. And, we're just going to see how it runs here. So on an upscale, just a typical easy quality upscale, that brings us all the way up to 70 FPS, which on this title, I feel is very, very, very adequate. I don't think that you need to worry too much about, sky high, frames or anything like that. Now we are in a pretty easy to run area here. So let me come over here and run over to like a more populated, dense street and just kind of see what happens there. Again, this is all completely and totally maxed out. So you're still in the 60s, even though you're in this area with, a little bit more NPCs, a little bit more stuff going on. So right here, I think that this would be probably a very, very good, adequate way to play it. All right, so let's do a little bit more upscaling to see what we can do as far as getting closer to maybe 120 FPS, because that is a typical refresh. All right, so you could turn VSync on and set things to 60, but right here we're just going to see what it would take to completely max it all out, but still run it at the ultra totally maxed out settings here. And again, if you've seen my other videos, this is typically not how I do it. This game is just unique in the fact that it has just a lot of options, and I feel like that would be kind of like exhaustive to go through it all. So we're just going to keep it simple and max it out and see what kind of upscaling it would take to get this to run at a pace that would make sense for this style of game. And to be honest, I think anything over 60 is more than enough for most people. You could reduce your textures and stuff like that if you wanted to, potentially increase it a little bit. But why not max it out and get 80 FPS here at Balanced? Balanced is doing pretty well for us here. So we are in, a little bit open area here. So we're creeping up to about 80. All right, so 83. There we go. So I am going to just kind of run around here, get over this hill. But yeah, we're at 80, 90. We'll try to get to 90. Maybe performance would do it. Now, performance with FSR 3.1 enabled definitely looks pretty good. It's not DLSS quality. FSR 4 would be. However, again, it just, for whatever reason, man, AMD's just incredibly complicated when it comes to these overrides and stuff. I mean, as a person who tests a lot of cards, so that didn't really give us that much. So I would probably just run quality, to be honest. As a person who tests a lot of cards and deals with a lot of these different things, you know, this is just insane to expect someone to deal with this. You know, I'm using DLSS swapper to swap in FSR 3.1 from FSR 2, and then I still can't get the override to work to the point where it's so frustrating when it comes to AMD, when it comes, you know, when stuff like that, you know, because they make awesome hardware, but their software is just a pain in the ass to use. And I'm definitely going through this after being a little emotional right now, because I just fought it for about an hour and still came up with nothing. But yeah, I mean, look at it. It looks really good, you know. So in this area, I would probably just still say that quality was plenty. So let's go back up to that quality and see what we get back. All right, so let's come over here and go up to quality. All right, there it is. So yeah, we got performance and then off. So yeah, off is not great. So let's go to quality and just see what kind of difference quality and performance make in this you know, kind of town area here. So that still keeps you around 63, 66. Now right here, you could turn on AMD's fluid frames. So I'll do that now and jump back into it. So it might require a restart. Typically it does. But I'm going to turn on those fluid frames because this does not have built-in frame generation. So I'll do that and I'll be right back. All right, so here we are back in it with fluid frames enabled. And as you can see, we've got a nice performance lift there. Okay, so let's jump into it here. So let's go into settings and see what we're working with. All right, so we've got, of course, 4K. We're not going to change that. All right, everything looks good here. All of this has stayed put. All right, so FSR is set to quality right now. So let's just turn it off. Let's leave TAA on high, MSA on that, 4X, and then let's leave that right there. Okay, so right here, these are our current settings. Everything's basically maxed out, and we've got fluid frames enabled. All right, so here we go. Okay, so we are at 36, 37 FPS. Whew, this is rough without any FSR. All right, so we're looking like we're going to have to definitely use at least quality. All right, because this is not necessarily like a really tough town to run. Strawberry Town is pretty tough, but, you know, this is kind of middle of the road. But right here at 37, 36 FPS, let's jump down and just go ahead and use some of that quality FSR. So let's come into here. And again, this test is completely different than how I would normally run it, just because this game is just not set up to be like test friendly. It's got a lot of settings that don't really do anything on their own without you know, a bunch of toggles and whatnot. So I've just kind of maxed it out, and we've got everything working pretty good here. So right here, we're back up to 82 FPS, 80 FPS. This is again with those fluid frames enabled. So as you can see here, this would be a very, very good way to play it. Again, you're able to completely max this title out, use fluid frames, and you know, this is overridden with DLSS swapper for FSR 3.1. It looks really good. So let's go ahead and see what kind of other settings we can expect with those fluid frames enabled. All right, so come down in here, keep everything as such, and let's go into it and see what we can do. A little bit of FSR balanced. There we go. I skidded right by it. All right, so there we go. So let's go ahead and hit yes on that, and we've got it set to balanced. All right, so there's not a lot of difference between these settings. Gets you up closer to 90. So, you know, this would be, again, just something to think about what kind of performance you wanted here. So, yeah, VRAM, nice little break on VRAM, though. We're at 11 gigs of allocation and only 7.4 of used, largely due to upscaling. All right, so let's keep on running through here. And let's do one more look at performance just to see how high we can get it with those fluid frames enabled. All right, and I do have fluid frames set to not blend, but to repeat. It usually is a cleaner image. You don't want to blend and blur. And then, you know, of course, I have it set to favor quality. instead of performance. So it just gives you a better looking image. There's no real reason to reduce your quality when a game, you know, of this age runs this well, you know, on this hardware. So let's keep on going here. Let's jump up to performance before we close it out and see what we can expect here. So let's come down here. Hopefully I won't fly by it this time. All right, yep. So here's performance. Go ahead and hit yes. All right, let's jump into it. Here we go. All right, so that gives you a little boost in this area, around 90. Still not a huge lift. Again, we went into a more densely populated area, so that kept that kind of hurt our frames a little bit more than normal. So right here, about 81 in the town itself. So you get a little bit of a swing. So if I were to come out here to an area that was a little bit less dense, you would see a little bit more lift in our overall performance here. So let's just come up the hill. Let's see, we should be around 90 here. So really going to performance is not that much better than balanced. It gives you about roughly, I would say, 8 or 9 more FPS with fluid frames enabled. And I don't think it's worth it. I think quality with fluid frames would probably be the way I would play this title. You know, and again, this is tested very differently from what I normally do. Just the nature of the game, you know, with all the different options and toggles. It was just easier to max it out, especially with the age that it's at. I didn't think that this card was going to have much of, you know, any trouble doing it, but I just wanted to see if we could max it out and how much upscaling we needed. So really quality with fluid frames, you know, again, looks really good. So let's go do that, and then we'll close it out. So yeah, if you've gotten anything out of this, please drop a like, and of course, subscribe if you're new. But thanks for coming back. Thanks for checking it out. Let's let's just end with let's end with quality and see what we can do here. This thing always is. This is a very cantankerous title when it comes to testing. So let's see here. All right, so yeah, I mean, it didn't really drop that much. I mean, you went from 98 to low 80s, and you can do some quality upscaling. Now in the, you know, tighter areas in town, you know, it might drop into the 70s, but you're still looking really good. You're definitely over 60 all of the time with this setting. So again, you know, if you like this kind of stuff, please drop me a like, consider subscribing if you're new, and thanks for coming back if you're not, and we'll see you in the very next video. Peace.